Hi, this is Chris Newsom. Welcome to the Root Cause Analysis Podcast, where we'll take our listeners right to the heart of the important EHS issues. We're coming to you live from Woodland Grange, a conference and hotel venue in the Midlands. We now welcome Martin Elliker to the podcast. Martin is a senior learning and development consultant at Make UK. Martin has worked at Make UK for 8 years. He is a chartered member of IOSH, a chartered environmentalist and a full member of ISEP. Welcome to the podcast, Martin.
Thanks, Chris.
An impressive array of letters and numbers there.
No numbers, but a lot of letters.
Yeah,
and you know, you get the business card and it now is about that long.
But digital, of course, to save on paper.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. Excellent. So, welcome, and because you work at Make UK and we work together, I definitely know how busy you are. So, really appreciate you giving up your time to talk about all matters sustainability and environmental, and I really think our members are going to find this useful.
Really hope so.
Thank you.
No, it's good.
Now, the other thing to say, Martin, is because, and I'm not just saying this to make you feel good, you've got such a plethora of information and knowledge and experience in health and safety and environmental. Stick it all together, call it sustainability. We've got a lot of questions to go through. I am going to fire them at you very quickly, and you can provide us with an informative answer, if that's all right.
I'll try my very
Excellent.
best.
Now, just a note for everyone that's listening and watching this, there will be some clearly there's going to be some interesting bits that come up. If they have questions on any of those, they just send them in to us and we will go further into that. We might have another episode or even a spin-off series just featuring you, who knows.
Wow.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that
I
to
feel
you before.
nearly important.
Yeah. You are very important, as you know.
No doubt.
So, we'll go through these questions.
Okay.
So, we'll start off, most importantly, Martin, with you. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us how you got to where you are today? Give us a bit of a plotted history of how you got here, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. It was never an intention to go into health, safety or environmental management when I set off into the big wide world. I started life as a Royal Marine bandsman and spent some years sort of blowing a euphonium, playing a cello. And then found myself...
No,
not at the same time. Yeah. You can't sit and sort of stand at the same time. But I found myself sort of, once I came out of the service, sort of looking a little bit lost. I went to do quality control for a knitwear company, and then that led to work study and method study. And I was working for part of Dunlop when my HR director then said, got the perfect job for you. And I said, okay, come on, tell me, what is it? And he said, health, safety and environment. We would need a health, safety and environment manager. Ours is retiring. And I said, I know nothing about it. Don't worry, he said, we'll train you.
Right.
Which they sent me to a place called Woodland Grange.
I've heard of it.
In 1996.
Yes.
Before it was, none of this was here. We actually used to go for lunch on the big house on the hill, so that's how far back it goes. So that was my first sort of entry into health, safety, and then as was the norm back then, you got the tow bar fitted and you got environment attached as well. Yeah. Only because health and safety was seen as being a compliance sort of engagement, and environment had that compliance with it. So a lot of health and safety managers back at that time were given the role of environment manager as well. And I remember sort of looking for a course in environmental management, and the only course that was available was a course at Dunsford, which was GEC course.
Right.
So I went on GEC's environmental management course.
Interesting.
And that's where there's the link between you and I. And then it just snowballed from there, really. I've spent a lot of time working with organisations and companies to sort of better their environment, work with the Environment Agency as well. worked on permits and all sorts of weird and wonderful things within the world of environment, and hence the reason I've got so much knowledge. It comes from sort of taking on board a lot of teaching and a lot of learning. Every day is a school day, even now. And I find myself, one of the reasons I came to Make UK was to give some of that back. And I find myself now in a position that I'm able to do that with the courses that we teach here and the courses that we deliver, not only here at Woodland Grange, but also out into our membership and even further afield. I find that I can pass that knowledge on, and people are willing to listen. So, and that's why I'm here.
Awesome, fantastic. And you know, I've got to. I'll stop the compliments in a minute, probably, but I've got to say, you know, a lot of people are a health and safety person, let's call them, an expert in that, and then they do a bit of environment, or they're an environmental expert and they do a bit of health and safety. You know, you are truly, you wouldn't use these words, but you know, you are truly an expert in both areas, because, not just because, but you know, you've got the highest level of membership in terms of IOSH and recognition, and you've got the same with ISEP, which, if people don't know, used to be called IEMA, but is now called ISEP.
That's right.
We might get into it.
We'll touch on that later, no doubt.
Yeah. So, amazing. Yeah. So, thank you for explaining all of that.
That's okay.
Now, all of that then really does qualify you to answer all of these. I think to answer all of these questions. So, as I said at the beginning, I'm going to sort of fire the questions at you. You can do your best to answer them. And we might discuss some of them, but in most cases we'll probably move on to the next.
I'll give you my take on them
as
I see them.
Yeah, and I think that's clearly really valuable. Okay, so we'll start with how are regulatory expectations around environmental and sustainability matters changing right now?
It's a moving field. It really is. For years, the health, safety and environment manager has had to deal with things like the Health and Safety at Work Act and the Environmental Protection Act of 1990. Now, in the modern era, we've now got the Environment Act of 2021, which came into being. Although some of it has been enacted, a lot of it hasn't, and we're very much waiting on government to sort of give us a steer. There's 8 parts of this act, and only 1 has been enacted so far. Okay. So over the next 2 to 3 years, we envisage then a lot of that is going to be enacted, which means that organisations will have to take a lot more care of waste, which they're now doing, especially with the segregation of waste since March this year. But water, energy use, leading through to net zero, it's a changing field. And although we've gone through Brexit, we're still very influenced by what's happening in Europe. And I'm sure we'll touch on CBAM and what's coming in that sort of area. But over the next 2 years, really into 26 and 2027, there's going to be an awful lot of work that is going to come the environmental managers, environmental practitioners' way, just to make sure that A, organisations stay compliant, and B, business knows exactly what to do and how to do it.
Well, okay. Yeah, I this won't surprise you, but I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that. So all these other parts of the Act haven't been implemented, but they will be over the next 2 years, in your opinion. Yeah.
They're still sitting there. And things like biodiversity is within the Act, and organisations taking a bigger lead in what happens with biodiversity and ecosystems that they have an influence over. Really important. And that we hopefully give practitioners the tools in some of the learning that we offer. It's within PISEP, it's within even AISEP. So it's really important that whoever's sort of taking on board what needs to be done, we can help and we can lead, and that's hopefully what we're going to be doing over the next couple of years.
It just shows you how important competency is, isn't it? You know, that you talked about in your career, you know, when you're health and safety and someone just says, oh, can you do the environment as well? I mean, in my experience, so often that comes with no training at all, you know. That must be the same, it's health and safety.
Yeah, that's exactly it, and that's how the environment manager sort of got his role. He could understand, or she could understand, legislation as far as health and safety was concerned, and therefore you must be able to understand environmental legislation.
Same stuff, or not.
No, it's really not, but it has a knock-on into, both have a knock-on into each other.
Okay, thank you for that.
That's all right.
Now, in that answer, you mentioned net zero, which is where I'm going to go with my next question. So, where do you see the biggest gaps between ambition and reality in terms of net zero specifically?
When we talk net zero, and we do talk about it quite a bit in what we deliver, and I talk about it an awful lot to member companies and organisations that I visit when they talk about net zero. The biggest challenge for most companies, business organisations, whether they're small or large, is how big this net zero gig actually is. Right. People are used to setting 5 and sort of 10-year targets. With net zero, it's 25-year target. And the people who are setting the targets today and putting everything in place aren't going to be in place when we get to 2050. Yeah. And that's really difficult for some organisations to grasp. What do you mean? You know, we've got to have a 25-year target. Well, that's where you're at, and this is what we've got to do. And one of the biggest things for business currently is a lot of people have set net zero targets, and they've set targets for 2035, 2040. We're going to be at net zero by 2040, but it's bigger than that. Because what they're actually sort of saying, and Sainsbury's a really large company, and I was astonished when I saw a poster outside my Sainsbury's store that said, we are going to be net zero by 2027. And I looked at this and I thought, no, not across the 3 scopes, for an organisation as big as Sainsbury's. But then I read the small print, and it's always handy reading the small print. They said in scope 1 and 2. Okay. Well, scope 1 and 2 is what they can actually manage. Scope 3 is a lot more difficult, and that is where a lot of organisations have not sort of come to grips with the real concept of what net zero is all about. It's fine doing scope 1 and 2, you can control those. It's scope 3 that's the biggest sort of challenge.
I've heard you speak many times, and I've heard you say that, and you know, and seen it written down in material that you produce and so on. Just for the layperson, what are scopes 1, 2, and 3, and why is scope 3 so difficult?
Scope 1, simple terms. Scope 1 is a business's emissions, so the things that you put out into the atmosphere. So CO2 emissions. Right. Okay. So we're talking your grey fleet, even, but your HGV fleet. Okay. Things that you've got control over, i.e., electricity usage. Okay. Scope 2 is really where are you going to get that energy from, and you've got control over how you buy energy, and we hear of organisations having green energy now. I'm not quite sure how they get green energy. They get a certificate to say they've got green energy, which is always a contention because it comes down the same cable as your neighbour who might not be signed up for green energy, but you've now got a certificate telling you that you have. Important. Really important. Yeah. So those are the 2 parts of net zero, if you like, that you as an organisation have got control over. It's scope 3, which is your supply chain, both your suppliers and your customers, that you don't have control over. And the biggest worry for most people who set net zero targets is how are we going to calculate what scope 3 we're going to capture? Are we going to go to tier 1 suppliers, tier 2 suppliers? How far down that supply chain are people, an organisation is going to go? And then once they've got there, what are they going to be asking? because everybody will do it slightly different. They'll all be capturing carbon, I hope, by now. That's a real big thing, or capturing their carbon emission figures. But how are they made up? It's a problem. It's not everybody does it the same way.
Well, okay.
So that's a big challenge for a large organisation. It's a big challenge for a small organisation because the figures aren't exactly the same.
Yeah, interesting. So, well, more than interesting. So, and I knew this would happen. We'll never get through all these questions, but never mind. So in terms of scope 3,
yeah,
you know, what you're saying there is in scope 3, even, and you said, yeah, suppliers, but even customers. So you've got to somehow monitor or measure, you know, your customers. Let's say you're, I don't know, a warehouse or a wholesale, something, your DIY shop. There we go. There's a good example. You know, so people driving to your shop to buy things, you've got to somehow think about their emissions.
Absolutely, because they form part of your net zero strategy.
It makes sense, but
and think about it. If you're even a small, medium-term enterprise that is shipping, say, to the USA,
right? Yeah.
You've then got shipping sort of emissions to take into account. And are you going to do it by air freight? Are you going to put it on a boat? What are you going to do? Because they all have different sort of CO2 emissions, and that's something else you've got to sit and work out.
Wow.
If anybody's ever done their own carbon footprint and sort of gone to the nth degree,
did it properly.
Exactly. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about and how difficult it is.
Yeah, I'm with you. And like we said at the beginning, that is definitely another episode on its own, it sounds like to me. So we'll move on, Martin.
Okay.
So you mentioned, another thing you mentioned there was CBAM.
Yeah.
So, as you know, and I know, we get a lot of questions from our members about CBAM. It's a very, very hot topic for various reasons. So just, you know, if you could tell us what it is,
okay,
what's going on with CBAM, and most importantly, what can people do about it? What do they need to do about it?
Firstly,
yes.
Currently in the UK, and we sit here in 2020, towards the end of 2025, there's no regulation on UK CBAM. It's currently in sort of discussion with government and industry. Ourselves, we're even sort of talking to government on CBAM, UK CBAM. But in Europe, it's been in place since October 2023. And a lot of our members, and we've run webinars on this, and we've actually gone out and sort of spoken about this. In Europe, they started sort of collecting information for the carbon border adjustment mechanism, that's CBAM in a nutshell, in October 2023, so they could start to report in January through to March, the first quarter in 2024. And that's been ongoing now for a couple of years. We're now into the third quarter of 2025 for Europe in reporting, but that's had a knock-on effect into the UK because we still supply European companies. Therefore, we've still got to tell European companies what CO2 equivalent emissions are actually in that product.
Understand.
So you've got to take your product line by line and actually tonnage-wise explain to your customer this is how much carbon emission there is in a nut and a bolt, for example.
Makes sense. So although CBAM, we know it is coming, but although it's not live in the UK, there is no law, as you say, because there is a law in Europe. If we supply into Europe, it's about knowing what questions we're going to be asked and will have to answer. I mean, it's not an option. Okay.
Exactly that. And knowing, they started in Europe with sort of default values.
Right.
Now, at the start of this year, default values went. Nobody could use default values anymore, which meant everybody's got to start to calculate what their carbon footprint is. Carbon footprint for a particular product, a particular service, whatever it is. And that's where the problem has come, because UK industry has not been used to having to calculate. Even EU industry wasn't used to having to calculate what their carbon footprint is for a particular line or a particular product. Now, with the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which was put in place to make a level playing field across the world, because people produce steel cheaper in, say, China or India than we can do here in the UK or even in Europe. This sort of adjusts those costs, if you like, and makes it fair across the whole world. So Europe took the leap in 2023 for 2024, and now it looks likely that certain parts of industry will fall under UK CBAM in 2027. And I just hope, I'm really sat here hoping that October, November this year we'll get some clarity from UK government about methodologies for working out what your CO2 emissions are and what you've got to put into reporting.
Yeah, and as you said, I mean, Make UK's policy team, I know you work very closely with them, are lobbying, government to get those sort of answers.
Absolutely. And even this week, one of our RAB sort of conferences up in the northwest we're talking about CBAM and saying that it's far too complicated, it's not transparent enough, we need it to be more transparent. And I know that's what we've taken back to the policy team, for the policy team to then pass on to UK government. We want something that's simple and easy.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a bit in the next subject we're going to discuss as well. I mean, you don't want to all be doing something, or everyone doing something 100 different ways, do you?
We need that methodology.
And everyone just do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as I say, leading on then to the next question. So, in particular, the rising focus on climate disclosures. So, we're talking about ESG reporting, of which there are a multitude of regulations, as that's as far as my knowledge goes now on this. In your opinion, on this ESG reporting, what do companies often get wrong, or maybe could do better, let's say?
The easy answer is they don't get it wrong, because it's a piece of regulation now, but it's a lot of financial sort of reporting, and sometimes financial part of a company isn't totally versed in what the environment is all about or what environmental management's all about. So they need that professional within their organisation to just explain it through. Environmental social governance, the governance bit they get right. The social bit, they don't always get right. Companies do an awful lot of sort of support for society, and their social sort of values come out just by employing people. If you employ 50 people, for example, then your social sort of footprint goes further than that. And if we take the 2.4 sort of an acronym that is around having 2.4 people in your family. If you employ one person, you're actually looking after 2.4 people. And organisations don't realise that, we are doing something for the society. Not only are they doing that, but they're also doing things like litter picking, and making sure that they've got some biodiversity around their site, just so the community as a whole sort of benefits from that. And the environment side of it, the E in the ESG, people are aware of environmental management and we don't break the law, but it's bigger than that now. It's not just about compliance, it's being seen to do the right thing. And I hate saying this, but it's being green, and how many people have a manicured lawn anymore? Not an awful lot of people, because they let it grow a little bit, which is the right thing to do. And I was up in Chester earlier this year, sort of with a company, and I did a talk, I did a presentation about what they can do for the environment and what ESG is all about. And every individual in an organisation or whatever organisation has a part to play, and has a big part to play in achieving this ESG status for a company. Everybody can turn a light switch off, everybody can stop a tap dripping. And it is as simple as that, really. It's the stewardship for the generations to come. We're laying the foundations.
And I always, when you think about ESG, and I think most people these days, well, I don't know, a lot of people more than used to know ESG means environment, social, governance. in that social bit, and you've just talked about it, it's about people, isn't it? But and quite often we think about people externally, what do we do in the local community, whatever it might be, but it's also our own people, employees as well. So
definitely.
It's everything. So I think there's a strong link between the social side of ESG and just health and safety. It's got to all fit together, hasn't it?
Wellness in health and safety, it's something that hasn't been sort of thought about too much. We've dealt with the safety side. We've guarded everything to the nth degree and made sure that people can't get injured. But if people do get injured, then they're off work and part of your machine is missing. You've trained these people and they do a great job. If they're missing, it's like part of your machine is missing, which means it won't work properly. So the social side of things, making sure people are well, making sure that people come to work and enjoy work and go home safe at the end of the day, really does transcribe into ESG quite well.
Yeah, and in conversations I've been having recently, and I'm sure you're the same, there's this increased focus on well-being, isn't there, of
definitely.
employees? And that fits in as well because it's that social side.
One of the sort of capitals we talk about within environmental management is social capital. And that really does look at people's well-being and how many of us actually take time to go for a walk at say lunchtime and just have a look at what's around us and then go, I'm great. I'm glad I'm alive.
Or even have a lunch break at all.
Have a lunch break at all. Yeah, that's right. But equally, it has that human aspect, i.e., our well-being. They say, our environment can give us 30 to 40% of our well-being just by sort of taking the time to go out and breathe the air, as it were, and just take a look at what's around us.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in a way, people might say we're not here to talk about well-being, but anyway, we've started to talk about it now. It's that realisation that actually, you are as an organisation responsible for the whole thing. I don't want to bore everyone to death, but even if you look at the Health Safety Work Act, it's not said well-being. I understand that, but it's
But it talks about welfare.
Indeed,
Section 2.2 of the Health and Safety Work Act, Part E of that is welfare, and it's been there since 1974, and people don't realise that that's exactly what it is. Okay, welfare in a safety aspect is making sure you've got enough toilets, but it isn't. It's making sure that people are looked after and taken care of.
And quite often when these that's not new, is it, ESG, but when these mnemonics or acronyms come along, they often make things more complicated. I think there's an opportunity here that actually makes it more simple because it actually brings environment, sustainability, health and safety all together.
And that's it, Chris. Keep it simple and just see what you can do to A, support your community, B, your own welfare and your own well-being as far as sort of just take a walk now and again, see what's around you. Take the binoculars with you and see what you see. And it's just great.
I agree, Now, as we're talking about things that are really simple to do there, let's move on to carbon accounting.
Oh, do we have to? No, okay.
So carbon accounting is becoming a critical issue for manufacturers. How do you see, in your visits that you make and people you talk to, how do you see businesses adapting to do carbon accounting? And I suppose a similar question as before, what are they getting right, what are they getting wrong in terms of carbon accounting, reporting emissions, etc.?
Understanding what carbon accounting actually is really key and important to start with. And a lot of organisations have this right because a lot of organisations work under an environmental permit, and part of that permit means they've got to do their carbon accounting every year. It's part of the reporting cycle. But a lot of small, medium-term enterprises consider carbon accounting to be not another job. It can be made simple, and what we're looking at later on this year is launching a carbon accounting course for people, so we make it simple. And I'm currently finishing that off, and it will be simple. It'll guide you with the tools that you need. They've been around for some time. UK government have had carbon calculators on their websites for time immemorial, really. but people don't know they're there. And one of the things I get when I'm out there consulting and also training is, where do we find this information?
Yeah.
And it's very simple. The UK Gov website contains carbon calculators. There's the greenhouse gas protocols that also have carbon accounting calculators sat there ready for people to use, and it's not difficult as long as you know where to go.
Yeah. That's the problem, though, isn't it?
It is.
Because I'm with you on what you said there. I think that as soon as you say it, people are like, oh, it's just those two words sound complicated. I've got to get an expert to come and do it for me, whatever it might be. So
it's really funny this, because I was with a company yesterday, H&P Chem Farm over in Tipton, and their health and safety manager sort of got a call. It was about something else, but I said, well, you know how to calculate your carbon? She said, I don't have a clue, Martin. So I pointed her in the direction of the carbon calculators and the greenhouse gas protocol, and she went, why didn't I know about this before? And I went, well, you've never asked before. Simple as really simple as that. But it just highlights how far people's knowledge about carbon accounting goes. They think it's difficult. It can be if you get into a whole host of things, but make things simple for yourself. Start with a product that you sort of supply a lot of, and work with that, work your carbon footprint out for that, and then everything else will fall into place.
And just pick on something else you said there, these podcasts are about giving people information, and that's it, and insight, and hopefully we're doing that. But you also mentioned there that you've actually, you really, have actually produced a carbon accounting course that will be launched, and I obviously I'm aware of it. I know that's ISEP accredited, so it really, not that it wouldn't be, but it really means something, and it answers a lot of those questions.
It does, and the good bit about this course is ISEP leave you alone to sort of put the bits in that you need to put in, i.e. carbon calculator, and also examples of how to calculate your CO2 emissions. And it's really important that people know how to do that. Once you know how to do that, you're really 90% of the way there. But it's that knowing where to get the data from, which you've got to collect yourself, how much electricity is used and what's your electricity rate, but then using the UK government calculators to work out how many kilowatts means how many sort of tons of carbon you've actually sort of put into the atmosphere. Once you can get your head around that and understand where that data comes from, then it is pretty simple. Once you've done it once, then it falls into place. Okay. And hopefully what this course is going to do is have examples of how to calculate your carbon, starting right at the very beginning of, I've not got a carbon footprint, how do I go about getting it?
Okay.
Simple.
Sounds brilliant. Okay. Excellent.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it will be. Okay, so now going on to, again, something else that may be changing. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about 14,001.
Oh.
Now, I know it's one of your favourite subjects, but we know that is being revised.
Yep.
I mean, I think most people are probably aware of that. Now, it isn't being, my understanding, it isn't being revised, and it won't be issued until sometime next year. Mm-hmm. So the question I'm going to ask you is, because I could say what's going to change, we don't know what's going to change, but in your opinion, given all your expertise, what do you think? What's your best guess at what's going to change? We've
been doing some digging. Of course we have.
Okay.
We need to know. We offer an awful lot of courses where ISO is concerned. 14,001 awareness, 14,001 internal and lead auditor. And it's really important that we're ahead of the game here. And we knew, well, I certainly knew, but we as an organisation knew this was coming probably around sort of the end of May,
right.
early June, that 14,001 was changing. And the changes are to fall in line with the changes that have been made to the skeleton standard ISO use, which is Annex SL. And 9,001, the quality standard, and 14,001, the environmental management standard, are going to be issued early in 2026, so January, February next year. We'll have a clearer understanding of exactly what's changing in October, November when they release the final sort of draft. But we believe that Clause 6, the planning clause, is going to change significantly, in so much that planning and managing change is going to be boosted.
Right.
It's something that organisations do, they do manage change, but how far do they go when they do manage change? What I found is that change is managed to a certain point. It's managed to the point where you've put a new piece of equipment in or you've got a new procedure. But what the new clause will do is get you to look deeper and further into that, i.e. what happens after that change has been affected. Has it actually affected the change that you want it to affect? Has it made a difference? So that's one of the major changes. There's also a little bit of change into the leadership clause. And with 14,001, we envisage Clause 7 is going to basically stay the same. Clause 8 will have a little bit more into the planning, emergency planning clause that's at the centre of sort of any emergency that there is. Clause 9 is going to have a little bit of change as well. At this moment in time, management review, that's sort of being looked at and sort of seeing what can be done. And then the continuous improvement clause, Clause 10, that's going to have a slight change in there as well. Okay. But it's all to fall in line with, like I say, Annex SL, and then what's happening with 9001 and bringing all of them together.
Okay, and so that means, my experience of Annex SL is mainly around 45,001, the health and safety standard, obviously. I'm familiar with that. So I know, as you said, that Annex SL is common across 45, 14 and 9. So those changes that come in will affect all of those standards?
They will.
Yeah.
Okay. 9 and 14 are the first standards to sort of be changed that we'll know about. 45 comes the year after. 45,001, it's envisaged the changes to that standard will be dealt with through 2026 and then implemented early in 2027. Okay. So again, a little bit more work for us.
Yes, lovely, brilliant. It's we're not busy enough already. Yeah. And I know we will be, as we find out more information, so we've made a more than an educated guess, an informed opinion on what might happen. But as we know more and more is confirmed, we'll obviously communicate that to members and, what does it all mean? So.
Well, I spoke sort of about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I spoke about doing a webinar when we get to sort of October, November time, when we do know the final draft, to sort of explain to our membership what the changes are all about and how we can help them sort of affect that change. Okay. And with everything, when the change is made, you'll go through your audit cycle, and 2026 soon becomes 2029 when it's all going to be put in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that. We're nearing the end of this interrogation. Sorry, interview. So
never interrogation,
no,
Chris.
Obviously not. No. So a couple of last things. What is the environmental story behind this phrase we hear quite often, green skills? So what does it all mean? What's it about?
For an awful lot of British industry, manufacturing industry especially, we've been sort of behind the 8 ball, if you like, a little bit when it comes to green skills. Yeah. Our thinking is still, and it's a phrase I use when I train, old world. Okay. We are very much part of that old world, the Industrial Revolution, and using sort of carbon fueling, oil, coal, that sort of thing to sort of power industry. We've got to get better. And green skills is all about making our workforce more viable for the future. We are going to have an industry, manufacturing industry especially, that will rely on green skills, greener technology. And a couple of years ago, I spoke with NatWest Bank, and they were talking about green skills and only lending money to organisations that can prove they've got some planning towards green skills.
Okay.
I think, my opinion, not everybody's opinion, green skills has taken off. We're seeing, excuse the pun, the green shoots, as it were, of green skills, but there's a lot more to go. I think AI is going to have a big impact into our green skills and where we're going to go. But also the leaders in this are going to be people like energy companies who haven't been leaders in the past. They've been more of, oh, we've always done it this way. Now they're getting their act in order. And I think we're going to see an awful lot of, in inverted commas, green training, greener apprenticeships, right. You know, talking about not using fossil fuels and coming up with what can we do in the future. We've got to have a systemic change in what we do. We can't keep burning fossil fuels. So that means we've got to be greener, and those green skills are going to come to the fore. And, you know, things like AI and things like, you know, innovative technologies have got to boost this and sort of steer us in the right direction.
Okay. Understand. Thank you very much. Last question, Martin. Last question. It's a big one, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. So, if you could offer one piece of advice to leaders in organisations that are concerned about this changing regulation and responsibility and accountability, what would that be?
Don't ignore what's right in front of your face.
Okay.
Because a lot of it, the answer is, and I've talked about it earlier, is simple. And the answers to we have environmental practitioners, environmental professionals, call them what you want, for a reason, because they get the training in a specific skill, i.e. environmental management. And often companies don't use that skill that they have under their own roof. Okay. For years, environmental management has been, oh, it'll be all right, somebody will deal with it. And yeah, somebody will deal with it, because it's often meant that if you don't, you get a fine or you get prosecuted. Now it's more important to be ahead of the game and take on board what's going on around you. I've spoken to quite a lot of leaders over the past couple of years about what does environment mean and where are we going with it. And ESG has certainly given that a boost. But it's now a case of, do you know what your carbon footprint is? Don't think, oh, it's okay because we'll get there in the end. Yeah. Start counting your carbon now. You know, start working out how much CO2 equivalent each individual service, product you offer actually does have. Because when you start doing that, and when you start sort of implementing some of that and some of the thoughts and the ideas and actions that come out of your counting carbon because you want to reduce your carbon footprint, then your environmental management really does follow. Well, it doesn't follow, it leads the way. And it's got to be a leader. Environmental management is now the new, if you like, health and safety. It's got to be integrated.
I think that's a good analogy. I was just thinking that, you know, the health and safety, still now, but certainly a few years ago, health and safety, we're saying, you know, we need leadership to be involved. And, you know, a similar comparison might be, you know, you would expect a leader of industry to understand their accident frequency ratio.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, that's something, not always the case, but that's something which we're pushing for in health and safety. And there's a similarity with environmental management. You know, they are the leader. They need to understand the impacts that they're having.
Often I ask business leaders, do you know what your carbon footprint actually is? Yeah. And the answer you get back is either a blank face or no. Yeah. You know. So it's really important. 25 years ago now. Yeah, 25 years ago now, I did a little project looking at a can of cola and what the carbon footprint was for a can of cola 25 years ago. Right. So that's how long I've been counting carbon, if you like.
Not a new thing.
The new thing, you know. It isn't new. It's been there for a long time, but organisations, manufacturing especially, hasn't paid attention to it because they've not had to. Now they're going to have to. with CBAM and everything that brings in place. And also supply chains are now sort of being put under the microscope as far as, well, what's the carbon footprint for transporting X, Y and Z across the world?
Well, as a country, we have signed up, like many other countries, to the net zero pledge, and it's a requirement. So I understand, all of this step change of how we're going to do that needs to happen, otherwise we'll miss the target, won't we?
And people need to think long term, not short. It's not going to happen in 5 years. Yeah. It's not even going to happen in 10 years. It's going to happen in 25 years. And people have got to realise, organisations, leaders of organisations, got to realise that it's not going to give you a benefit overnight. The next 5 years is important, but it's that long-term goal. Are you going to get to net zero? Do you know what carbon you are emitting into the atmosphere? And if you do, great. But by 2050, which is the pledge, that's when you're going to know all of it and got to do something about it.
Yeah, brilliant. Insightful as always, Martin. Hopefully that wasn't too much of a more of a discussion than an interrogation.
Oh, I think so. Definitely.
Awesome. So thanks for your time again. Great to see you.
No problem.
Cheers, Martin.
Great to see you.
Thanks for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and I'll see you on the next one.